What's up, Raptors fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. It's another day for the Toronto Raptors, another loss, and another rumor. Shout out to NBA Central Desk tweeting out, Toronto is active in trade talks and open to moving players. Now, this should come as no surprise given the fact that Raptors have two guys that are heading into free agency with player options, and both of those two players are very likely to opt out and demand a decent amount of money. And yes, I'm talking about Fred Vanvleet and Gary Trent Jr. So for today's video, I'm going to be discussing those two players who I would move. And ultimately, I'll give you my decision on whether I think the Raptors should tank, retool, and what they should do with this roster moving forward. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to hit the subscribe button, that'd be great as well. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to Zabi Joshan. So Jabi, thank you so much for supporting this channel through likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's break that article down for you that was reporting that the Toronto Raptors are active in trade talks. Now, people around the league are keeping tabs on the Toronto Raptors as they continue to fall in the standings. Teams have already started calling the Raptors to inquire about their core players. Now, I do apologize about this ad in the middle. They're getting free advertisement here, but this was in the article. Toronto is reportedly active in trade talks and open to moving players, but it seems like their asking price are a bit high, which is something Michael Green reported on yesterday. League sources say Toronto is active in trade talks and open to moving players, but the asking price has been described as insane, astronomical, and far-fetched, wrote Matt Moore of Action Network. Now, first things first, guys, I will say I don't know who Matt Moore is, and with all due respect to you, I've never heard of you. So some of these rumors, you really have to question whether they're pretty much just saying the same thing Michael Green just saying. We have heard these rumors before where teams were waiting to see what the Raptors were doing. They're calling them about their core. So again, sometimes it's just recycled stuff with a lot of reporters. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but it's obvious that the Raptors do need to make some moves. Now, let's talk about Fred Vanvleet first, because obviously he's been the hot topic for a lot of Raptors fans. A lot of Raptors fans want to move on from him. So let's take a look at Fred's statistics here before we start talking trade talks. Now, Fred has clearly struggled this season. When you take a look at his stats here, I mean, the guy is shooting 32.4% from the three-point line. And it's the weird thing about me for Fred Vanvleet more than anything is how does a skilled shooter like him who's shot no less than 36% in his entire career from the three-point line go from shooting 37.7% to shooting 32%? Is it an injury thing? Is it a physical thing? And he's also shooting the worst. He's rated the worst shooter in the world, not in the world, in the NBA, I should say, by percentages. Field goal percentage is 37.4%, which is just downright terrible. It's unacceptable. He is still getting steals, which is good. But again, his assists are down. It seems like a lot of his numbers are down. His point production is down. One thing I will say, I don't understand why he's still playing a lot of minutes. I don't know if that's a Nick Nurse thing. I know sometimes NBA players say they're fine to play heavy minutes. So again, it has to be maybe based on Fred Vanvleet wanting to play heavy minutes. Maybe it's on Nick Nurse. Whatever the decision is, the frustrating part about Fred Vanvleet has been that sometimes he just takes way too many shots. He doesn't really play the point guard position, and clearly he's been struggling a lot, so he should not be shooting that much. But I will say one thing in defense of Fred Vanvleet. I know a lot of people are blaming him for yesterday's game, and yes, that final shot should have gone to Gary Trent Jr., and that's something Fred has to continuously work on, is to learn to play the point guard position a little bit better. So again, that's something I will say he needs to kind of just let his ego go a little bit, address that point guard position role a little bit better, play more like Kyle Lowry. He's clearly doesn't play the same style as Kyle Lowry, but it would be nice if he could assume that role a little bit better on this team. Obviously, a team that has four players that all want to shoot. So I will say in Fred's defense, he had 12 assists. He's getting a lot of people involved, and he did have a lot of good plays in that game. I know people want to shit on him. He got that big steal against Giannis yesterday. He also had those 2 3-pointers, which ultimately jump-started the comeback. So yes, people will blame Fred. I think that's a collective effort. We just played terrible overall. Pascal was missing a lot of shots, but I want to say one thing in defense of Fred Vanvleet. Now, people will call me a homer, will call me a Fred fanboy. That's not the reason why I'm defending him. I will say one thing regarding Fred Vanvleet. I don't think you should trade him now because his value is at an all-time low. You don't trade players when their value is at an all-time low. Look at Terrence Ross. The Raptors waited till his value was built up while he was playing a little bit better. Look at Norman Powell. They waited for the right moment before trading him. And remember that season when he started? He started terribly, and then we saw what happened. He built something really nice. He was playing so well for the Raptors, and then ultimately a lot of Raptors fans were questioning why you traded Norman Powell. I think you have to wait for the value to build up a little bit. I know people are saying just trade Fred Vanvleet for anything. That's not how the trade works. That's not how Masai Ujiri functions. In fact, when you take a look at trades that Masai Ujiri has done, the only player I can really recall who he traded that was on a downward spiral was Andrea Bargnani. So I don't remember any other players besides that. Ultimately, I do think you need to keep Fred Vanvleet, not because I like him, not because I think he's a great point guard. He needs to play a little bit better, and maybe those are conversations that Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster and Nick Nurse need to have. Like, they need to sit him down and tell him that, look, you have to play the point guard position a little bit better, or there's no future on this Raptors team. He can't continue to play the way he does. But I do want to emphasize one more thing before we move on to Gary Trent Jr. And that's the Raptors culture, guys. I know people are quick to say trade this player, trade that player. When you take a look at what DeMar and Kyle Lowry built throughout the seasons, one thing they built was a Raptors culture. Whether people want to believe this or not, Fred is a big part of that. He's got the Raptors culture. He's also a vocal leader. Scotty Barnes has said this post game, not yesterday. He said this about a month ago that, Fred and Pascal were texting him, were, giving him a lot of support when he was struggling. So I think that's one thing we need to keep in mind, because we got rid of every player that built the Raptors culture. Serge Ibaka, I know he was there a little bit after, but DeMar DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, Norman Powell is gone. So if we keep trading off these players, you're kind of losing that culture. So I think you need to keep him around for the culture, but you also need to seriously have a talk with him in terms of his style of play. Definitely doesn't suit the Raptors with the way he's playing, but I would not trade Fred for that reason. And before people say I'm crazy, I'm just defending Fred for no reason, I want to state that I defended Pascal the same way. I like to give players the benefit of the doubt because I think they're human beings. They go through injuries, they go through mental stuff, they go through things that we do as human beings. And that's why I think Fred is capable of playing so much better. Like I said, a shooter like him who's never shot below 36% from the three-point line doesn't just mysteriously shooting 32%. And before people mention the age thing, guys, he's going to be 29. He's not going to be 39. 29 years old in the NBA is so much more different now than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. They're a lot more better than taking care of their body, their nutrition, their technology, everything. So I think for the time being, the Raptors do need to keep Fred VanVleet on the roster. Let's talk about Gary Trent Jr. now. Now, Gary Trent Jr. actually started this season very poorly as well. He's been playing so much better as of late, and obviously he made a huge shot. He has the clutch gene within him, but the only thing is the Raptors don't ever give him that shot. It's usually Pascal Siakam. It's anyone almost, it seems like, except for Gary Trent Jr. that's taking the last shot. So I would like the Raptors to go to him a little bit more. I don't know if that's a Nick Nurse thing, but taking a look at Gary Trent Jr.'s statistics, sir, he hasn't been performing all that well up until recently. He had injuries to start the season. You see his statistics there, 18.1 points, and it's not a huge increase from last season. He's averaging less points. The one thing he has improved on is overall his field goal percentage. He's shooting a lot better at the rim. He has this push shot, kind of like this floater he does. His three-point shot has definitely gone down a bit. I expect that to bump up a little bit. Again, same thing with him. He's a really good three-point shooter. He's not going to be shooting 35.8%. I expect that to go a little bit closer to last year, where he's shooting 38.3%. And look, he's a good free throw shooter as well. So I expect his percentages to come up a little bit. He's finally getting healthier. He's finally not playing off the bench. His confidence is sky high. But I will say, if there's one player the Raptors should look to move, it's Gary Trent Jr. Now, this is one of the reasons I've highlighted throughout my videos throughout the summer. And the reason being is he is with Clutch Sports, the agency that is all about players, the agency that is all about getting their players played. And considering I'm not saying they're the same type of players, but considering guys like Tyler Hero, what they got paid, I think Gary is going to look for a similar payday. Now, I'm not expecting Gary to demand $33 million, but there's going to be no doubt that Gary at the starting point is going to be at least $25 to $27 million, and his contract from there on is only going to increase. So again, I don't know if I want to pay him that much. He's also going to be 24 in 13 days. So that's one thing you do need to consider in mind if you're Masai Ujiri. If Masai Ujiri is sitting right in front of him, before I trade Gary Trent Jr., this is the question I'm asking Masai Ujiri. How much better do you see Gary Trent Jr. getting? Because one of the most valuable assets you have in this league when you're doing trades and you're making trades is young players that have shown a lot of potential. Gary Trent is 24. Do you see Gary Trent Jr. from 24 to 26 getting that much better? If the answer is no, then I would move Gary Trent Jr. only for one reason and one reason only. Because if his career averages are 18, 19 points per game, that's not bad at all. But the thing is, one thing you do need to emphasize on the Raptors when they're trading is value and potential. Like I said, they traded Norman Powell when his value was at an all-time high. And one thing you can do with Gary Trent Jr. is sell to the point. This could be a selling point to a lot of teams that are looking to trade for Gary Trent Jr. is not only does he have his age going for him, he's on a reasonable contract, and they get the negotiation rights before any other team would if they do let him go into free agency. Again, I don't think the Raptors are foolish enough to let Gary Trent Jr. walk. I think you ultimately do pay him the money if you don't trade him. But I think if there's one player that's getting traded from the Toronto Raptors, is Gary Trent Jr. Masai Ujiri has never talked about him once. Guys, before you don't want to take my opinion too hard, that's fine. You don't have to agree with me, but take at least what Masai Ujiri has stated about this roster. Yes, obviously there's a lot of roster construction issues, but he has yet to mention Gary Trent Jr. It's almost like that ex you never talk about. That's how Masai Ujiri is with Gary Trent Jr. He's not mentioned his name once when it talks about the team's core, the future. What does that tell you? There's a reason why Masai Ujiri and Gary Trent Jr.'s agency signed the 2+1 deal. Hell, the Raptors don't even have his birds right. If the Raptors had signed him to a 3+1 deal, that would have given him his birds rights. But the Raptors don't have that. They signed that for a reason, because Masai Ujiri, he probably was straight up and truthful with Gary Trent Jr., which was, you're not part of the team long term, and Gary Trent Jr. wants a bigger contract sooner rather than later. Why? That was a reason that the contract was signed the way it was. So that's why I think that Raptors will ultimately look to trade Gary Trent Jr. And I think he also holds one of the, obviously, you're not trading OG and Scotty and Pascal, but I also think besides those three, he has the most value in terms of trade asset, which is why I think the Raptors should look to trade Gary Trent Jr. Also, guys, I want to bring to your attention one more thing here. We did get another rumor from NBA Central. Shout out to them. They were saying Pacers expected to trade Miles Turner at the deadline if no extension is reached. Now, again, the only asking point is the Pacers don't want another shooting guard. So that's the difficult point in trading Gary Trent Jr. You have to get a third team involved that would have to send some assets that the Pacers like, and maybe find a way to get Miles Turner on the Toronto Raptors squad. Now, I will give you my final verdict, because I know a lot of people are leaning towards a tank, guys. There's no guarantees. The thing with the tanking right now, if the Raptors continue to play poorly, the Raptors are very realistically picking anywhere from 6th, 7th to the 11th spot. I know there's some good assets, but a lot of fans just run off of hype. They run off of some of the names. Fade for Cade. That's what we're hearing. We're hearing about Chet Holmgren last season. Now we're hearing Wembanyama, who, by the way, is going to be a generational talent, but there's no way the Raptors are absolutely getting him. They're not that bad. They're not going to the first pick. They're not even getting Scoot Henderson. So that's all I'll say regarding tank. I think the Raptors should reconstruct the roster, maybe get some bench pieces. They need a starting center, and Miles Turner would be a good starting point for that. But I'm very intrigued to hear what you guys think about everything. I know a lot of people want to trade Fred VanVleet. I know some people may want to move Gary Trent Jr. I honestly, if you're asking me, I'm not touching OG, Pascal, or Scotty. Those are untouchables on the Raptors roster. Currently, I'd throw even Precious in there. I don't think I'm moving Precious. He's a big part of the Raptors culture, what they're doing defensively. I mean, their 6'9" lineup. I know people aren't high on that, but I'm keeping Precious out of trade talks as well. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of all this trade talks? Who are you moving? Who would you like to get? Let me know in the comments below. And of course, I do have a trivia question for you today. And since we got the return for All-Star votes today, I'm going to be asking, who's fourth in the All-Star votes in the Eastern Conference front court? Is it A, Jimmy Butler? Is it B, Joel Embiid? Is it C, Jason Tatum? Or is it D, Pascal Siakam? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, through your likes and comments. It's always appreciated. If you guys subscribe, that'd be cool as well. And that will be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.